My husband abandoned our family to join a sacred circle of eternal brothers, and 5 years later, he tried to discipline our son for wearing sneakers. This isn't what real men wear. He screamed, as my teen rolled his eyes. We met in college, Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. I was studying social work. He was in environmental sciences, but if you asked him, he was there to learn how to unlearn. Alaric always had that wanderer energy. He was tall, intense, the kind of person who'd stare out into the distance during a party and say something like, "I feel everything too deeply." Back then, I thought it meant depth. Now I know it just meant instability. We moved to Asheville after graduation. A quiet, artsy town nestled between the Blue Ridge Mountains. You've probably seen it in pictures: street murals, weekend farmers markets, endless trails, and crystal shops on every block. Alaric felt drawn to it. Said it was on a ley line, whatever that meant. I just wanted a peaceful place to raise a family. Our son Milo was born when I was 27. He had these serious eyes from the start, like he was already sizing up the world. Alaric loved being a dad at first. He'd play guitar for him, carry him around in one of those wraps, read him poetry at night. I really thought we had something. That maybe he was growing out of his seeker phase. But people like Alaric don't grow out of it. They grow deeper into it. The cracks started to show when Milo was about 5. Alaric began spending more time at this group he called the Circle. At first, I assumed it was just another hiking group or local retreat thing. Asheville has dozens. I didn't ask too many questions, not right away. He said it helped him clear his mind. Be a better man. But he came back different. Detached. He'd stop mid-sentence to breathe with the trees. He'd lecture me about processed food, even when I was just heating up some leftovers. At dinner, he'd go off about energetic blocks and toxic frequencies in conventional parenting. It wasn't quirky anymore. It was off. I remember one night, clear as day. I was washing dishes, Milo playing with Legos on the floor. Alaric came in wearing a white robe and no shoes, smelling like incense and earth. "I've been initiated," he said. "I'm no longer bound by false identity." I thought he was doing a bit. I laughed. He didn't. That night, he packed a duffel bag and left. He didn't cry. He didn't kiss Milo goodbye. He just said, "You'll both understand eventually," and walked out the door barefoot. For 5 years, I didn't hear a word. At first, Milo asked a lot of questions. I answered what I could without lying or vilifying. "Dad's going through something. He's figuring himself out." But as the months passed and birthdays came and went without a single phone call, Milo stopped asking. He hardened, not in a bitter way, just older than he should have been. He started helping around the house more. He got quiet when his friends talked about their dads. He never said he missed him. But I knew. I threw myself into work, 2 jobs. Bookstore by day, senior care assistant by night. Milo and I had our little routines. Friday pizza nights. Saturday park walks. He liked coding. He collected sneakers. He became my whole reason for pushing forward. Every now and then, I'd see guys that almost looked like Alaric, long hair, bare feet, that same glazed-over spiritual look. I never approached them. Didn't want to know. Then, one summer afternoon, 5 years after he left, I got a knock at the door. It was like seeing a ghost. Alaric. Barefoot. White robes. Thinner. His beard had grown long and unkempt. His eyes were still intense, but emptier now, like something inside him had burned out. He stood beside 2 other men dressed just like him, like backup singers at a doomsday concert. "I've returned," he said, like he was Gandalf or some crap. Milo was upstairs. I told Alaric to wait on the porch. He looked around the house like it was a relic from another life. "I've been called back to fulfill my role," he said. "My son must know the truth of who he is." I asked what that meant. He told me Milo needed to be reclaimed and taught real manhood. That he'd been away because he had to transcend ego to be reborn. That the sacred circle had trained him to break cycles of weakness. I told him I'd let Milo decide. I shouldn't have. At first, Milo was curious. I could see it in his face. Like, maybe, just maybe, this man was finally going to be a father. They started meeting on Saturdays, hiking, breathing ceremonies, and wisdom integration. It sounded like nonsense, but Milo came home each time with a weird mix of amusement and confusion. Then it started getting weirder. Alaric told him that real men shouldn't wear deodorant. That sneakers block your connection to the earth. That coating was a form of digital enslavement. Milo just nodded politely and changed the subject. He was already more emotionally balanced than I'd ever been at that age. But it came to a head one Saturday afternoon. Milo came downstairs wearing his new Nike blazers, sleek, white with a crimson swoosh. He was proud of those shoes. Bought them with his own money. He was grinning, spinning around like a model, asking, "Too much? Or just enough?" Alaric was already waiting outside. The moment he saw the sneakers, his whole demeanor shifted. Like someone had insulted his god. "What are those?" he said. Milo blinked. "Shoes. That's not what real men wear," Alaric snapped. "You're becoming one of them." Milo frowned. "One of who?" Alaric stepped forward. Soft. Submissive. Lost. You don't even see how you're being programmed. Real men walk the earth barefoot. Real men don't need consumerism to feel whole. Milo crossed his arms. "They're just shoes, man." That's when Alaric raised his voice. "This isn't what real men wear," he shouted, hands trembling. "You're becoming a reflection of her weakness." I stood up from the porch chair so fast it nearly flipped. "That's enough," I said. "You don't get to talk to him like that. He's mine, no. He was yours. And you left. You gave up your right to discipline or judge him the moment you walked barefoot into the woods and decided a drum circle mattered more than your son." Milo was silent. Not scared, just done. He looked at Alaric and said, "You're not a father. You're a guy who used to live here." Then he walked back inside. Alaric stood there, lips trembling, hands still at his sides like he was waiting for applause that never came. Then he left, stomping down the sidewalk, robes fluttering, barefoot again. Always barefoot. I didn't see or hear from him for a few weeks after that scene. Honestly, I thought maybe he'd finally realized how ridiculous he looked, yelling at a teenager about sneakers like they were a gateway drug to moral collapse. I half expected him to slink back into the forest with his robed disciples and disappear for another 5 years. But people like Alaric don't disappear when they're wounded. They perform. They regroup. They look for the next stage, the next audience, the next platform to air their pain like it's prophecy. I should have known. It started with the emails. First, a vague, passive-aggressive message about parental alienation and the deep spiritual wound inflicted when a child is robbed of his masculine lineage. Then came a second email, more formal. It included a scanned PDF document titled Reinstatement of Paternal Guidance, a ridiculous manifesto-like letter that he sent to me and filed with the local courthouse. I opened it on my phone while standing in line at Trader Joe's. He was filing for joint custody. Not visitation. Not a parenting plan. Joint custody. After 5 years of zero contact. After being gone for nearly half of Milo's life. After screaming at our son over sneakers. I nearly dropped my basket. I called my lawyer, Tony, right away. She's a powerhouse. Sharp, direct, no fluff. When I explained the situation, she paused for about 2 seconds and then said, "We'll bury him." Court dates were scheduled. Statements were written. Milo had to talk to a court-appointed counselor, which broke my heart because he'd finally been healing. The sessions didn't last long, just a few interviews, but even so, I could see the subtle shift in him. The way he shut down when I asked how it went. The quiet. The long silences during dinner. I wanted to fix everything. Shield him. But some wounds don't come from outside, they come from the silence left behind when someone who's supposed to love you just disappears. When Alaric showed up to court, he didn't wear a suit. He wore a linen tunic with embroidery down the sides, no shoes, and carried a wooden staff that he leaned on dramatically as he walked into the courtroom. I wish I were exaggerating. Tony leaned over to me and whispered, "He's about to lose everything and doesn't even realize it." The judge took one look at him, then looked at the file Tony handed over: 5 years of zero financial contribution, zero contact, zero effort. My journals, emails, screenshots of Milo's messages to friends about his confusion and pain. It was all there. But Alaric had one final dramatic move up his sleeve. He brought a witness. Not a character witness. A spiritual brother from his circle, some guy named Enzo who claimed to be a healer of masculine polarity. He wore a necklace made of bones. Literal bones. Claimed he'd seen Alaric walk through fire for his family. The judge stared at him like he was trying to decide whether to laugh or call security. The hearing lasted under 2 hours. Custody denied. Visitation? Supervised only, and only if Milo agreed. He didn't. Alaric walked out of the courtroom with the same glazed-over look he always had when things didn't go his way, like the universe was testing him rather than rejecting his nonsense. For a while, things calmed down. I finally got back into a rhythm with work, and Milo started spending more time with his friends. He joined a robotics club. Started tutoring younger kids in coding. He even started dating a girl named Elise, who had this nervous laugh and wore Doc Martens with every outfit. She made Milo soft again, in a good way. But Alaric wasn't done. He started showing up around town. At first, it was subtle. I'd see him across the street while I was locking up the bookstore. Barefoot, of course. Sometimes with that Enzo guy, other times alone. Just standing there. Watching. Not saying anything. Just existing in my peripheral vision like some specter who wanted to be seen but not acknowledged. Once, I saw him at the grocery store, standing in the produce aisle holding a single avocado. He didn't buy it. Just held it like it held the answers to everything. It wasn't illegal. He wasn't threatening. But it was unnerving. Milo noticed too. He didn't talk about it much, but I could tell. He stopped walking home from school. He asked me to pick him up from the library instead of biking. He started locking his bedroom window, not because of crime, but because he's weird and I don't trust him. I reported the sightings, of course. But the police couldn't do much unless he trespassed or made direct contact. He was just another strange man in Asheville, and sadly, we had plenty of those. It all boiled over one afternoon in October. Milo had just turned 17. He had saved up for months to buy a new pair of Jordans, high tops, deep navy with gold trim. He was so proud of them. Posted them online. Wore them to school the next day. That afternoon, I pulled into the parking lot to pick him up. Alaric was there. Standing beside my car. I locked the doors immediately. Called the police. But before they arrived, he spotted Milo walking across the lot and called out, "You're still lost." Milo stopped. Took out his earbuds. Slowly turned to face him. "You're still her reflection," Alaric shouted. "Shoes can't hide your shame." And then, with a dramatic flourish, he held up a match and lit something, a strip of leather, maybe. It smoldered and fizzled in the breeze, completely underwhelming. Milo didn't say a word. He walked past him. Got in the car. Buckled his seatbelt. Didn't even look back. "I'm done," he said. "I want a restraining order." And that was the first time I saw the anger, not sadness, not confusion, but rage, in his eyes. "I gave him too many chances," Milo said quietly. "And now I don't even want an apology. I just want him gone." I nodded. And we drove away. The restraining order process took longer than I expected. You'd think a barefoot man screaming about shame and setting things on fire in a school parking lot would be an open and shut case, but the system doesn't move as fast as fear does. We filed immediately, backed it up with every report, every documented sighting, every instance of unsolicited contact. Still, we were told we had to wait for a court date, again. Milo took it better than I did. He was stoic, focused on school, acting like nothing had changed. But I could tell, every time he double-checked the locks before bed, every time he looked out the window a little longer than usual, it was in him. He was carrying the weight of a man who never truly knew how to put it down. And me? I hated that I had to protect my son from his own father. I stopped working late shifts. My neighbor, Marla, started watching the house when I had to leave. She had this enormous golden retriever named Axel who barked at falling leaves, but I welcomed the noise. It felt like a layer of safety, no matter how superficial. Alaric didn't show up again in person, at least not right away. Instead, he shifted tactics. He started sending letters. Not just to us, but to Milo's school. The principal called me one morning, confused and more than a little concerned. Apparently, someone had dropped off a thick envelope full of handwritten pages titled The Return of the Father, the Sacred Balance of the Masculine Soul. I had to pick it up from the office. Milo's name was mentioned 16 times. Inside were wild ramblings, rants about how Milo was losing himself in a world of synthetic validation, that he needed to be rebuilt from the inside by walking barefoot across the earth until his spirit remembered its roots. There were diagrams. Literal diagrams. One showed a foot, labeled with chakra points and something he called the Path of Reclamation. Another was a stick figure inside a circle, labeled Cosmic Man. I laughed, but it didn't feel good. It felt sad. Embarrassing. And above all, infuriating. I called Tony again. She escalated everything. This isn't just erratic. It's harassment, she said. We had our court date for the protective order expedited, and that was the one silver lining, legal protection was finally within reach. But before that could happen, Alaric tried one last desperate move. It was a Thursday. I was at home prepping dinner, something simple, roasted chicken and vegetables. Milo was upstairs, working on a project for his robotics club. Elise was coming over later, they were going to test some kind of sensor thing he'd built. I'd stopped pretending to understand half of what he was doing, but I loved the way he talked about it. He lit up around technology like his dad had once lit up around forests. Then the power went out. It wasn't storming. No wind. No flicker, just silence. Deep and sudden. I looked out the front window. The neighbors' lights were still on. Street lamps, too. That's when I noticed the back gate was open. My stomach dropped. We always kept it latched. Always. Milo. I called up the stairs, my voice louder than I meant it to be. Yeah, he shouted back, unfazed. I grabbed the baseball bat from the coat closet. It wasn't a plan. It was just instinct. I moved through the house with the kind of cold, vibrating fear that lives under your skin when you know something's wrong before you see it. The sliding door to the backyard was unlocked. I never leave it unlocked. I pushed it open slowly and stepped out. And there he was. Alaric. Sitting cross-legged in the middle of my backyard, surrounded by candles. Shirtless. His eyes closed, palms facing the sky. He was chanting. Something slow and rhythmic, like a lullaby spoken in another language. I couldn't move at first. My brain couldn't compute what I was seeing. My ex-husband had broken into my backyard, cut the power, and was meditating shirtless in the dark like he was summoning an ancestor. Milo doesn't want you here, I said, my voice low. He didn't respond. Just kept chanting. Get up, I said. You need to leave. Right now. He opened his eyes. Calm, glassy, too wide. I've reclaimed the ground. The portal is open. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the level of detachment was so far beyond logic that it didn't feel real anymore. I raised the bat. Not to swing, but to make it clear. Get off my property. Finally, something registered in his eyes. He stood, slowly, like he was lifting himself from some spiritual trance. Then he said, "You'll regret this." "Not as much as you will," I snapped. He turned, walked barefoot across the grass, and vanished into the night. The police came 20 minutes later. They filed a full report, added it to the ongoing harassment case, and promised they'd try to push up the court date again. Milo stayed silent the whole time, standing in the kitchen with Axel the golden retriever pressed against his legs. When the officers left, he finally spoke. "He's gone for good this time, right?" I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to say yes more than anything. Instead, I said, "We'll make sure of it." The next morning, Milo installed a home surveillance system with motion detection alerts and an app that pinged our phones in real time. He used his own money. The same kid who once cried when he couldn't find his favorite Lego now knew how to install multi-camera security networks because he didn't trust the man who gave him life. Let that sink in. We had to wait another 6 weeks for the court hearing, but this time, the police took the situation seriously. They called it what it was: stalking, trespassing, and harassment. I guess once you've got shirtless backyard candle ceremonies involved, people finally stop asking questions and start paying attention. The restraining order was granted in full. Alaric was barred from coming within 300 feet of our home, Milo's school, my workplace, and anywhere Milo was known to frequent. Violations would mean arrest. The judge didn't even hesitate. He looked over the police reports, the school statements, the rambling letters, the nonsense diagrams, and said flatly, "Mr. Lark, if you so much as send a paper airplane toward your son, you will be prosecuted." Alaric tried to defend himself, of course. Claimed it was spiritual misunderstanding, that he was being persecuted for his enlightenment. That his son was being colonized by materialism and needed cosmic intervention. The judge didn't even blink. "Sir, you cut off your family for 5 years and came back demanding obedience. That's not cosmic. That's delusional." Alaric left the courtroom in silence, without shoes. Again. But revenge? That part came later. And no, not the kind you see in movies. No flames, no arrests, no screaming matches. Just a slow, patient unraveling of everything Alaric thought gave him power. It started with a podcast. Milo and Elise had decided to create a senior year capstone project together, a podcast about alternative spirituality, cult dynamics, and personal stories of people affected by non-traditional parenting ideologies. They called it Feet of Clay. Yeah. Feet of Clay. Milo interviewed kids who had grown up in similar households, some with doomsday preppers, others with extreme spiritualist parents. They talked about gaslighting, about shame, about trying to grow up while constantly being told the world was evil and they had to ascend. It was raw, honest, and surprisingly professional. Elise edited every episode like a documentary. The audio quality? Chef's kiss. The first few episodes got shared on Reddit, then on TikTok. Then it snowballed. Episode 6? That was Milo's. His story. He didn't name Alaric, of course, not legally. But it didn't matter. Anyone in Asheville who knew about the barefoot-robed man who used to hang around local parks pretending to channel the sun, they knew. And the best part? Someone from a local spiritual retreat directory heard it and flagged Alaric's group, the Sacred Circle of Eternal Brothers, as a potential high-control group. It got them blacklisted from 2 wellness festivals and a grant they were applying for to build an earthbound renewal dome in Arizona. Alaric tried to post a rebuttal on a fringe forum under a fake name. Something about false testimonies from a fractured boy child, but it got ripped to shreds by commenters who connected the dots, recognized the tone, and screen captured everything. Milo didn't say much when it all blew up. He didn't need to. His silence said it all. I don't have to yell to win. In the meantime, life got better. The house finally felt safe again. The cameras stayed up, but eventually, they stopped sending alerts. Milo got accepted into NC State's computer science program. Elise got into the same university for digital media. They celebrated by going to a sneaker convention, where Milo bought a limited edition pair of forest green Jordans. He made sure to post a photo captioned, "Worn proudly on the colonized ground." Yeah. That one got a lot of likes. I started dating again. Nothing rushed. Just coffee dates. Grown-up conversations. No robes involved. Imagine that. As for Alaric? Last we heard, he was trying to sell online courses called The Rewilded Masculine through a sketchy website that accepted only crypto. His circle shrank after their festival bans. A few former members even reached out to Milo, apologizing. One of them asked to be on the podcast. He declined. Sometimes silence is the mic drop. The revenge wasn't fire and fury. It was dignity. Truth. Exposure. It was watching a man who once thought he could control everything lose the one thing that actually mattered: influence. Milo didn't burn bridges. He lit up the whole damn path forward. And me? I finally got to exhale. We didn't need to destroy Alaric to win. We just needed to keep going. With our shoes on.